Coming up on this new segment of OTGT, I'm talking about the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag announcement, some of the latest releases that just recently come out, a couple extra little goodies here and there, and some of my big PAX East plans for this year. It all starts right now. Welcome guys to a brand new episode of OTGT. I'm Jake James Lugo, also known as the Epic VFM. So, a lot of cool stuff to get into today on this episode. A lot of great exciting things that have been going on, a lot of cool stuff that's coming not too far in the future. But first, let's get down to business, okay? Big news, big leak coming out not too long ago about Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. It was originally leaked on Games Radar, which they actually leaked out a CG trailer, and pretty much the entire internet exploded with a whole bunch of embeds, a whole bunch of different, impressions and whatnot of this trailer. But more importantly, the concept of getting Assassin's Creed 4 so soon, just after Assassin's Creed 3. Right now, we're at the point where we haven't even really finished up the actual Assassin's Creed 3 DLC, The Tyranny of King Washington. We've only recently got the first chapter of it, which is pretty crazy in of itself. But the fact that it's coming not even, within the same year, like months, down the line after the previous iteration in the series is kind of cause for alarm. Because to be honest with you, I wasn't a huge fan of Assassin's Creed 3. I did like a lot of aspects about it. However, there were some issues that I had with the game, especially when I reviewed it way back when. But it is pretty cool that we are getting another game. Again, I still think it's a little bit too soon. I would have really kind of preferred it if they had probably waited another year or so to actually release another numbered Assassin's Creed game. To me, this game would have rather been would have been better called Assassin's Creed Black Flag rather than Assassin's Creed 4, because already there's so many questions at the ending of Assassin's Creed 3 that were raised. Are we going to get those answers that we're actually seeking, or are we going to get more questions to a much more bigger and broader kind of thing going on in the Assassin's Creed storyline? It's yet to be seen, but I'm looking forward to it. Now that we got through that little bit of news, now let's talk about the actual new releases that have come out recently. Couple cool games that have dropped, some really cool ones, especially on the Nintendo 3DS, with a couple other big ones coming within the next few weeks. But two games in particular I want to talk about that I picked up that I've been having a blast playing. One of them I mentioned in the last episode. The other one I kind of just recently kind of picked up at the spur of the moment thing. I want to talk about these two games specifically. First off, Fire Emblem Awakening for the Nintendo 3DS, and also Tomb Raider, the reboot for the PlayStation 3 and also the Xbox 360. Now, obviously, I picked up the PS3 version as my, preferred console choice. But let's talk about Fire Emblem first. First things first, Fire Emblem Awakening, I did not expect to like this game as much as I have. I've been having a blast playing it on my Nintendo 3DS. It's pretty interesting because, when you kind of think, strategic RPGs or strategy RPGs, you usually kind of get a sense of kind of like, a steep learning curve or a little bit of a much more really intricate and in-depth system that's really kind of hard to understand sometimes. You find it in a lot of other strategy RPGs, one of the more popular ones being Disgaea, but this one is a little bit much more streamlined, it's a little bit much more held back, but at the same time, it not only has the fun of any of those other past strategy RPGs, but also has a lot of the depth as well. There's a lot of cool things that can be done in this game that, when it comes to actually completing certain objectives or taking down certain baddies, and also even acquiring other units. Now, one of the cool things about this game in particular for the Nintendo 3DS, not only does it have Street Pass options, but it also has the ability to get some extra DLC that they have on the Nintendo Network, which is pretty cool, including different maps and different characters from past Fire Emblem games. So if you're a fan of the series, not only are you going to get a great new tale and a great new story in this game, but you're going to get some really good homage to some of the past games from back in Nintendo's history. Really, really cool. If you're a Nintendo 3DS owner, you need to pick up this game. Even if you don't like strategy RPGs or have never really jumped into one before, you're going to want to check this one out. Really, really, really freaking cool. But also, in addition to that, let's talk about Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider, again, another game I did not expect to like as much as I did when actually popping it into my console. Tomb Raider, again, everybody knows this is the reboot to, the classic Lara Croft, the original Tomb Raider that first appeared on PlayStation 1. This is for a whole new generation. She has a whole new look and a whole new feel for this actual game. A lot of the stuff that, is present in this version of Tomb Raider is very reminiscent of games like Uncharted. There are some elements, obviously, raiding different tombs and caverns or whatnot from previous Tomb Raider games. But a lot of the stuff that really kind of, made Lara Croft what Lara Croft was is kind of been kind of thrown out for the most part and actually re-envisioned and reimagined. This is an origin story of how Lara Croft becomes pretty much, the explorer, the daredevil and the archaeologist that what she becomes later on. But what's really cool is while there's a lot of similarities to Uncharted, a lot of different things of what is borrowed from Uncharted, it kind of does its own kind of thing with it. The story overall and a lot of the action sequences, a lot of different things that happen in Tomb Raider kind of explore much more of an emotional roller coaster that Lara has to go through when she's actually kind of, learning the ropes and actually becoming the legend, quote unquote, that she's supposed to come, which I think was really cool because while Nathan Drake is much more the, idealized, Indiana Jones-like character in the action adventure genre, Lara Croft is a much more kind of like emotional roller coaster ride where you're going to get, different types of character development than what you would see in Nathan Drake, and I think that's really cool. At the same time, this is again, one of the very few female protagonists that isn't really kind of over exaggerated and over idealized, that is much more grounded on reality in real life and kind of like realistic expectations, that's really going to have a real big hit with a lot of the feminists out there and a lot of the people that are really into female heroines in games. So check it out. Both of these games are fantastic. If you have not picked up any one of these recently, you may want to actually check them out. Alright guys, it's time for something a little bit different. Now I know I've been picking up a lot of different games for the different platforms that I own, but I've also been picking up a few knickknacks here and there. One big knickknack, specifically, is The Legend of Zelda Hyrule Historia. Now I know guys, I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, but I still wanted to pick it up and check it out, being a Zelda fan myself and being familiar with the franchise throughout the years. Specifically, what is in this book for anybody that doesn't know? In this book, pretty much, the Legend of Zelda Hyrule Story, it's a big chronology of the actual Legend of Zelda series and the different time frame that's laid out for all the different games and all the events that happen within them, which is pretty cool and epic in scale as it is already, because not only is it still not done, it's a changing one. Specifically, it's not just a straight line that's laid out, before us. Not only are things being added all the time with each new Zelda game that comes out, but it's also splits up into different sections depending on what goes on in certain games. For example, specifically, because I know this is going to get a little bit confusing at one point, I'll even show you guys. There are points, specifically in a game like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, probably one of the most iconic and one of the most popular games in the franchise. Depending on if Link actually succeeds or fails in his quest, depends on which games happen in a specific order in the timeline. At the same time, what gets also a little more confusing is that certain games that are later on in the actual Zelda timeframe are actually some of the earlier games that have come before games like Ocarina of Time. For example, I believe is that if Link actually fails, I'm going to see if I can find the page to show you guys. If Link actually fails in a certain thing in Ocarina of Time, I think if he actually loses his battle against, against Ganondorf, he actually, actually the timeline continues on towards the events of A Link to the Past. And then obviously something different happens if he succeeds, which more than likely most of us would like to see Link succeed. But outside of the confusing timeline and outside of, the much more in-depth details about the events of the Legend of Zelda games, you also get not only a look at games like Skyward Sword and in depth, as far as, the concept art, the different, game design thought processes that went into making that game, but you also get a look into a lot of different concept art from other Zelda games from throughout the entire franchise. A Link to the Past, the original Legend of Zelda, Link's Adventure, all different types of things, Four Swords. Pretty much, if you're a Zelda fan or if you're familiar with any sort of aspect of The Legend of Zelda, you're going to really appreciate this book because, again, there's a lot of different facts and a lot of different hidden gems that are, scattered throughout the entire book, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, there are a few little mistakes here in the printing of the book. It's done by Dark Horse Comics and Nintendo. Okay, if you wanted to get kind of like a detailed look of the actual mistakes that are printed in this book, go check out my friend HMK's video where he actually talks about some of those in there. But there's a few little nips here and there. But overall, as a package, this is any Legend of Zelda's fan's dream. This is pretty much, you're going to want to own this book, especially if you're a big fan of the franchise. Alright guys, we're getting close to wrapping up this episode of OTGT. A couple things I do want to mention though. Obviously I touched upon it, in my last episode. I am going to PAX East this year, which is going to be really, really cool. I cannot wait. We're going down to the home stretch of it with only a couple weeks away. I'm looking forward to seeing everything over there and meeting all kinds of people. I'm going to be getting all sorts of videos, pictures, interviews, all that jazz. All of that, more than likely, if not all of it, is going to be going up following right after I get back from PAX East that same week, which should be pretty cool. Hopefully I'll be able to include some really cool stuff in the next episode of OTGT following this one. If you're seeing this, beforehand, go check it out if it's already up or whatnot. But also in addition to that, I did also mention some PS4 talk in the last episode, but I didn't really elaborate on my actual impressions of Sony's event that recently happened in New York City. Reason being is because I actually did an actual reaction podcast over on the coalition.com that was part of the co-op podcast. It's kind of like our reactions and our impressions of Sony's event and how we felt of all the different reveals and things that had happened over there in New York City. So if you want to find out what I thought about the PlayStation 4 and all the news surrounding it, go check out thecoalition.com. I'll probably put a link in the description box for you guys. But also a couple other things that are also up on the website that are you guys should get a good kick out of. I did a written review of Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus for the PlayStation Vita. It was my first kind of official review over on thecoalition.com. I encourage you guys to go check it out. I had a lot of interesting things to say about the game, it being on the PlayStation Vita or whatnot, and I gave it my overall score. So you want to find out what I thought about that game? Head over to the Coalition. Again, I'll put a link in the description box so you guys can check it out. So other than that, guys, I'm excited for PAX East. I cannot wait. It's going to be awesome. I hope to see you guys. If you're going to be at the event, I hope to see you there. If not, I hope you guys check out the footage when I get back, okay? So, peace out, everybody. Stay epic.